I've been driving all day, and I'm almost there. I'm almost in Gothenburg, and it looks really Scandinavian right here where I'm turning the car because I took the wrong road. It says Hans Jørgensen's family, and that also sounds Scandinavian. It is a place here called Gothenburg, and it's not in this small town of Gothenburg. It's in the countryside. So I'm staying on a farm, and I'm looking forward to that. I've been riding with the owner, Mary Lou, and she told me that she was 25% Danish. So that's kind of funny. So I said, okay, then we can speak Danish. And she said, no. Driving down, I came from Rapid City this morning, and after an hour or so, I went to Badlands National Park. And if you haven't been there, you should make a stop there. It's absolutely beautiful landscape. It's totally stunning. And then I went further south, and it hasn't been that much excitement on the road. And at some point, I lost my cell connection, and that turned out to be a bit of a problem because I am using Google Maps for navigation, and I thought, what the hell? I know that I'm going south, so after a stop at a gas station, I just thought I'll drive south and then I'll get there. And then after 40 minutes or so, I noticed that I was going straight west, so I was in the wrong direction, and that cost me an hour before I got back on track. But now I'm here, and I'm at this farm. I'm on a dirt road right now, as you might maybe be able to hear, and I'm very close to being there, and they invited me to have dinner with them tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. It actually looks kind of Scandinavian. A little on the hilly side, if you compare it to Denmark, but this could be Scandinavia.
This is the Radio Vagabond, a podcast from the digital nomad too cool to ask for directions.
Hello. Good. Sorry I'm so late.
That's okay, you're not late.
I took the wrong turn at some point. I was without any cell connection, and then I thought, what the hell, I'm just going south. And then I drove for half an hour, 40 minutes, and realized I was driving west.
Oh.
so I had to make my way back, and that cost me an extra hour.
Oh boy.
But now I'm here. Hello.
Yeah, well here's the place.
Yeah, I sort of realized that.
Yeah.
Today I'm in Nebraska.
I can't remember, what was your name again?
Halla.
Helen. Your name? John.
This is cool.
I'm greeted by John and their dog, and I had a farm stay that I booked through Airbnb. Here they call it Retreat to Buffalo Creek Valley Bunkhouse. But you can also book it directly on their own website, yourbunkhouse.com.
Towels.
Yeah.
You need a towel.
Yeah.
Shower.
Yeah.
I get to stay in a renovated cabin that used to be the host's great-grandpa's workshop.
Coming. Pretty soon. You're coming for dinner, right?
Driving through the landscape, it almost makes me feel home.
And after showing me the cabin, we go over to the main house of the farm, where I meet Mary Lou and their grown-up son, Chris.
Mary Lou. Hello's here.
Hello. You Dane, you?
Good now.
Yeah, well, see, I don't speak it. I've been there, though,
Yeah.
but I haven't.
But you know a hygge.
I don't know any words.
What was your cousin's name?
Ingelisa.
Ingelisa.
Minor. M-I-N-O-R.
Ingelisa was her first name. Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, there's probably a million of those.
Welcome to another episode from my American road trip, where I explore Gothenburg. I'll hear about my host, Mary Lou, and her Danish ancestor.
My mother, who was a Swede, married my grandfather, who was a Dane.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of
Yeah.
upsetting too.
You still have the blonde hair.
Yeah, I do. And the wide set eyes. So you have wide set eyes too, I think. Do you think that?
I never thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I get to learn a lot about cattle farming in Nebraska. And then they'll take me to the Gothenburg Harvest Festival Parade.
So I don't know. But come in, take off your bag.
Kids long ago.
My name is Palabo, and this is the Radio Vagabond.
The ultimate destination for armchair travelers who are looking for inspiration to get out into the real world and let loose their wanderlust. This is the Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
This episode is brought to you in part by this website called hotels25.com. If you're a regular listener, you have heard me mention this before, and I can't say this enough. This is a cool website. It helps you find the cheapest hotel rooms around the world. Hotels25.com. You should try it out. It actually works. Chris is a modern-day cowboy, and he was about to go check on the cattle roaming around on the fields. He asked me if I wanted to tag along, and obviously I accepted. So we saddled up in his pickup truck with the dog in the back and was on our way. We drove around on the field looking at the cattle. The cows, a bull, and even a little baby calf. I got to learn a lot about cattle farming in Nebraska from this fifth-generation cowboy.
So, Chris, where is that you're taking me?
So we're just gonna go out and look at some cows. We have some replacement heifers here. So they are year-old heifers that we are breeding to a bull that are gonna calve next spring. We're just going out to a pasture here to look at them. We do a lot of rotational grazing, pretty intensive rotational grazing. So we don't.
What does that mean for a city boy like me?
So rotational grazing.
As if I was a city boy. I grew up in the country.
Yeah. So we. It really is beneficial to the range land. So you'll see a bunch of fences going across the pasture here, and I'll get out and open the gate here right quick.
As Chris gets out of the car to open the gate to the field, let me talk a little bit about cattle farming here in the state of Nebraska. It's a significant industry here, as Nebraska is a major producer of beef in the United States. You'll find a large number of cattle ranches and feedlots where cattle are raised for meat production.
So, like this fence here is a division fence. So we'll have them in one part of the pasture. Each pasture has a different name. Like this is called the Moon Canyon for there were two sisters called Moon in the family. So it's Moon, M with the U and the N.
Yeah.
So we'll put them on one section of the pasture for however many days the grass is available, and we try not to take more than 60 to 70% of the grass off the pasture land. And then when the cows eat the grass, it encourages, just like mowing your lawn, it encourages growth. And then we'll give it like a 60 to 90 day rest period so that it has plenty of time to recover.
So these fields are only for grassing? It's not any crops here?
These are. We do have fields that we do crops on, but we primarily do cattle. And the stuff that we do crops on, everything goes back to the cows.
Nebraska has favorable conditions for cattle farming, including a large supply of grass and feed crops, as well as a good climate for year-round grazing. The state has also a strong transportation infrastructure and is located near major beef processing centers. We're driving on a bumpy, hilly field.
I'm glad we went in this truck and not in my car.
And I can see that Chris is a pro. He's definitely done this before.
We're going up a steep hill now, and we made it.
So you can see here, like these are weeds, these sunflowers, and they are here because we grazed it a little too heavily in April and May when we were calving.
Yeah.
But this is a good location to calve. It's close to the house. If a cow is having problems getting a calf out, then we can get her in quickly. But the weeds are just nature's way of putting up something to cover the ground, to prevent moisture loss, to prevent the soil temperature from getting too high, so that other grasses won't grow. So that they're not a great deal. They're indicative of short-term poor management or some mistakes being made, but long-term, the weeds do a beneficial job in maintaining soil moisture and different things.
Yeah. I've always wondered what is the purpose of weed when I had a garden.
Yeah, they're just trying to get the soil covered.
Yeah.
So these black and white cows are a cross, and all of them except for the all solid black cows are a cross between the Angus and the Hereford breeds.
Uh-huh.
So this one probably has more Angus in her because she's got more black, but she's got the white that's indicative of a Hereford.
Yeah.
And this red and white one, they have a lot more Hereford in them.
Yeah.
But they are all...
The Hereford are more common in Denmark.
Right.
Yeah. How many do you have?
In this group, there's only about 68 in this group, and then we have some more spread out throughout like 15 miles away in 2 different pastures.
But still, 68, that's a lot of steak.
Right, it is, but for this area of the world, it is not a very large.
No.
We're very small
Okay.
producers.
Okay.
And this guy here, this is kind of an interesting. So we market a lot of grass-finished, grass-fed beef, no grain. And so this bull here is a 3-year-old bull, and he is an Akuushi bull. It's a Japanese brown cow, is what it's called. But they only recently came over to the United States, probably 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to be very good for like grass-finished type things.
Okay. I noticed that he doesn't have any horns.
He does. It is a genetic trait, but a lot of times we will chop off the horns just because if you're working an animal in the chute, it makes it easier for them to get their head in the head catch. And then if the animal is, a little feisty and tries to run you over or something, it's just a safety precaution there too. Yeah. And it's not a lot, just probably 95% of our animals are super calm.
But is he the only bull here?
There's another Akuushi bull in here. Usually a bull can breed about 30 cows in a breeding season. We have about a 60-day breeding season.
Yeah.
And just 60 days makes it easier to market your product at the end.
Yeah.
And any longer than that, and you have a lot of different sizes of calves. You have calves that are weighing 300 pounds all the way up to 600 pounds.
Yeah.
And that just makes it a little harder to market.
Asking a stupid question, how come I see more cows than bulls? Is it? My guess would be that when they're born, it's 50-50.
Yeah, it is very close to 50-50. And usually if you sell your animals, the steers or the bulls that are castrated you'll pay more for those because they gain better in a feedlot environment. But a bovine can, when they breed, they ejaculate just a little tiny bit, and they can, I think it's maybe 20 times a day they can do that.
Whoa.
Right, whereas a boar for pigs will do once a day, and it's a very large amount. And so because a bull can do that so often, he can cover, depending on how long you leave him in with the cows, he can cover about 30 cows for a length of a 60-day breeding season.
Yeah.
But it all depends, on when that cow comes into heat and how long she's in heat and whether the bull is around her a lot. And if you have bigger pastures, it's a lot harder to get your cows bred because the bull can't find the cows a lot of times.
I know a few males in the human race that are like that as well.
Yeah, don't we all?
As mentioned earlier, Chris's mother, Mary Lou, is 25% Danish. And when I had dinner with the family, she told me a fascinating story. Before we get into that, after a short break, I want to mention a couple of things. Firstly, when I was having dinner with the family, and Mary Lou told me the story, I wasn't recording. Plus, there were so many details that needed a lot more research. So in the production of this episode, I've asked Mary Lou to do that. And she's been hard at work for days digging into her family's history, talking to members of the family and reading up on some old letters and so much more. Also want to say that me being Danish, I've chosen to say the names of people and Danish landmarks as we would say it in Danish. So the island of Møn is actually pronounced Møn. And a little fun fact, Mary Lou's great-grandfather's name is, in their world, spelled differently than we would spell it. Mary Lou and her family would say that his name is spelled N-E-I-L-S, but in Danish, it's actually N-I-E-L-S. We would never spell it that way, and I bet you anything that Niels himself didn't either. But somehow, sometime, it got changed and stayed that way. Just a little fun fact. And with that, get yourself a nice beverage, send the kids to their room so it's nice and quiet, and get ready for a tale filled with adventure, hardship, excitement, seasickness, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of scandal. We'll be right back.
You can see pictures, videos, and links and read much more on the radiovagabond.com. You can also send a few lines to Palabo and get featured on the show. Tell him where you are and what you're doing right now as you're listening to these words. Just click on Contact on theradiovagabond.com and fill out the form. And now, let's get back to the show.
Once upon a time, in a village called Råbylille, on the small island of Møn in the southern part of Denmark, a girl named Marie was born in the year 1862. She and her family were very poor, and as a teenager, she dreamed of a better life in the great new country called America. Her cousin Jim had been there, and on a visit back to Denmark, he called it the land of opportunity. After some consideration, Marie decided to embark on a journey to this new land of milk and honey, far, far away, in search of a better life. Or was there another reason? More on that later. One early morning, she walked with her niece and dear friend Christine the 10 kilometers from Råbylille to the dock in Stege on the small island. As they were walking, Marie said to Christine, "Jeg vil ikke være fattig som mine forældre. I'm not going to be poor like my parents." On the small ferry from Møn to Copenhagen, teary-eyed she waved goodbye to her niece, not knowing if she would ever see her again. I'm guessing that Marie, apart from being nervous, was also excited to the adventure laying ahead. But unfortunately, her excitement pretty quickly turned into nausea, and she spent most of the voyage on her back, praying for dry land. As the ship swayed and groaned, Marie was overcome by the afflictions of seasickness. But maybe there was also a touch of morning sickness thrown in as well. The trip and the seasickness also meant that Marie would never see Denmark again. In a letter home to Christine in 1883, she wrote, "A lot of people, like Cousin Jim, go back to Denmark to visit, but as I get so seasick that I almost die, I dare not sail, and I shall never come back to Råbylille and Møn again." It was also told that she could barely watch the wind blow across the water in the stock tank on the Nebraska farm without getting seasick. But despite being seasick, or something else, she persevered and made it to the shores of America alive. And after that, all the way to Omaha, Nebraska, in the center of the country. This in itself is a long journey of more than 1,200 miles, 2,000 kilometers, and she probably made the journey on the brand new transcontinental railroad, originally known as the Pacific Railroad. In Omaha, she was introduced to a man called Niels, also from Denmark. He had immigrated with his mother and 2 brothers from Thisted in the home country a few years earlier. The Danish listeners will know that Thisted is in Thy in the northwestern part of Denmark and very rural. It actually looks a bit like this part of Nebraska, and even with the small distances in Denmark, it's very far from Møn, just about as far as you can get in the country, and very unlikely, especially back then, that someone from Møn should meet someone from Thisted. But in this story, that's exactly what happened. Niels, a young 25-year-old man, was looking for a suitable wife, and his family in Omaha apparently had heard about this new young girl from Denmark, fresh off the boat, and a marriage somehow either was arranged or they were simply introduced to each other by the family and fell in love. Anyway, Maria fit the bill, and they ended up getting married and settling down in a place called Wild Horse Valley near Brady, Nebraska. Maria had a son named Albert, but the circumstances of his birth were shrouded in mystery, or maybe a bit of sadness, or a small scandal. Officially, he was born after Maria and Nils were married, on October the 2nd, 1886. But someone in the family suspect that this was not his actual birthday, that the date was adjusted to cover up a story of his untimely birth. Also, no one knew for sure who the father of Albert was. Maybe it was Nils, but maybe it was not. One theory is that Maria had been taken advantage of by a man in Omaha, where she worked before she could speak English. Another theory, that also was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard about a teenage girl going on a one-way ticket across the world without her family, is that the young Marie already was pregnant when she got on the ship from Denmark and had chosen to flee away from the shame of having a child out of wedlock. Maybe that was part of the reason she got so sick on the ship from Copenhagen. Questions on this theory surround the story on both sides of the Atlantic, for even a cousin in Denmark asked a visiting relative, "Fandt I nogensinde ud af, hvem der var far til Albert? Did you ever figure out who the father of Albert was?" No one will ever know exactly what happened, and it doesn't really matter. No matter what, this is truly a story of people who handled a difficult situation in the best way they knew how. And regardless of the circumstances of Albert's birth, Nils loved him and raised him as his own. Nils and Marie built a successful farm and an impressive home on the Wild Horse Valley homestead and lived well beyond the poverty level of her Danish parents. It's been said that their house looked like a mansion compared to her parents' home in Råbyville. They had 9 children, but Marie also faced hardship and illness and losing 2 of the children. But they got through all this with a strong belief in God and Jesus. At some point, Marie wrote another letter back to her niece in Denmark. "Christine, I'm getting old and I cannot work much anymore, but my daughters work for me." Marie wasn't really that old, only 50. The oldest son, Albert, went on to marry a Swedish woman and had a family of his own. And their son grew up to become the father of Mary Lou, who's telling me the story as I'm having dinner with her and her family on the farm in Nebraska. In the end, it's a story of people doing the best they can with the hand they've been dealt. Marie's legacy was one of perseverance and love as she made a life for herself and her family in the new land far, far away.
Travel is possible at any age. Your sense of adventure is just over the horizon. So, reach out and grab it. This is the Radio Vagabond.
Let's get back in the car with Chris. It might not be a big farm they have, but in my book, they do have a lot of cows, a bull, and when I was checking on the cattle with Chris, we spotted the cutest little baby calf.
So this here, this is a baby calf, and this is, last year we had a bull get in with the cows very late. And so this calf, I am not entirely sure who he belongs to, but he's probably 2 to 3 weeks old. Mm-hmm. And so we usually calve in April and May, and so about 9 months ago is when she would have been bred. So yeah, we had about November, December is when we would have had a bull get in for her to get bred. And so he's right now 90 pounds, 100 pounds, and the rest of our calves are 600 pounds. Mm-hmm. And so he's just kind of, it'll be difficult to market him and to figure out what to do with him. But
But the cows, they don't, and I'm using the wrong word here, they don't give birth out here on the field. You take them somewhere and help them, or can they do it themselves?
Right, yeah, usually we try to let them do it themselves.
What is the right word for it?
Yeah, just give birth or calve, or, a lot of times I'll just, birth is fine.
Okay.
That's a fine term to use. We try to buy. You can genetically test your bulls for birth weights, so how big of calf they're going to have. Theoretically, they're not always right. So we try to get very low birth weight bulls so that our cows can have their calves on their own, and then we try to take good notes on whether or not the calf has good vigor when it's born. So if he's up right away and sucking, and he gets up on his own. And then that way, if a calf doesn't do well, he's, very poor health, we have to bring him into the house, we have to help him nurse, we're going to make a note of that, and then if we need to get rid of an animal, we can look back and see, okay, 701's calf didn't have great vigor, she didn't have good milk, let's get rid of her because she's going to be a problem in the future.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, just like in humans, you'll have a calf with a leg back. So a calf normally when he comes with his 2 feet first, front feet first, his nose right behind him. Yeah. And if he has one of his front feet back, she won't be able to push him out. Oh. And so you have to bring her in and push him back in and then get the leg back out. It's tough sometimes. Yeah. But most of the time I'd say we probably have to help maybe 5 to 10% of them, so a very low percentage, and that's a good thing to do, so that way you don't have to have a lot of labor involved. Yeah.
But what about milking the cows when they're out here?
So none of the cows, we don't do any milk, so it's all for the calves. We're just a beef herd.
Yeah, but don't they? So they don't produce milk when you don't milk them?
Right, when they don't have a calf on them.
Oh, if there are any farmers listening to this, they must think I'm so dumb.
You're okay. You're okay.
That's my role. I ask all the dumb questions.
So when after a cow, like about 2 weeks to a week before she has a calf, her bag will start filling up with milk, and then she has her calf, and then she has the milk until you wean the calf. Yeah. Or until she weans the calf. And so we'll pull the calf off the cow, and then her bag of milk dries up, and then she does not need that milk anymore. But while they're out here, usually, yes, the calves are just sucking off the mom, and they do pretty good at that. And that is another thing that we'll make notes of when we calve, is a lot of times... Well, not a lot of times, but sometimes a cow will have a really big bag and very big teats on the bag. Yeah. And so a little calf, when it's freshly born, can't get his mouth around the nipples very well, and so you have to bring it in. And then if you milk a lot of the milk out of that udder, the teats will shrink down to a smaller size, and so the calf can get a hold of it. And so that's another thing that you want to take a note of. It's just another thing that makes a lot more work that's probably not necessary, and you need to get rid of that cow eventually.
Cattle farmers in Nebraska use a variety of techniques to raise their animals, including pasture-based systems, feedlot operations, and a combination of both. In feedlot operations, they're confined to pens and fed a specially formulated diet to maximize weight gain, but in pasture-based systems, like this one, the cattle are allowed to graze freely on grass.
So are the cows out all year round, or
outside all year round? In the wintertime, we try to have them in a location with like a windbreak type situation, so that they can get in behind some shelter if the wind is really strong and if it's an ice storm. We don't want them to be out there freezing to death. And then if it is a really rough winter, and if they are out in the cold quite a bit, they can abort their calf too. Yeah. And so you have to pay attention to their health over the winter. But they're never, unless the cow is having calving difficulties and we need to bring her into the barn with her calf and it's super cold, they're outside all the time, which they do very good at it.
Oh, this is the way it should be all over, not on a concrete floor in a barn or
right. And if that's what has to be done at times, that's what has to be done at times. Yeah. We do like to.
In some places it's more or less most of their life they spent inside this small cubicle.
And for like dairy guys, that in that type of environment, that's to keep the dairy cows contained. It gets the job done.
Yeah,
I think that you can do it maybe.
You can't really
better.
have dairy cows out here like that.
Right.
It requires so much more.
And there's some dairies that do that have their cows outside and then have a portable milking stanchion, which is where the cows get milked. But it's a little more difficult to get set up and to get going. And farmers and ranchers are generally very stubborn and very set in their ways. And so to present an idea that hasn't really been thought of before, or like this is going to change how your operation works, you can just about expect that the guy is going to tell you to go.
Are you
pound
telling
sand.
me that farmers are stubborn?
Right, yeah. Who would have thought?
They are so not stubborn in Denmark. Kidding.
Yeah, sure.
I think that that's a universal thing.
Yes.
In recent years, there's been a growing trend towards more sustainable and environmentally friendly cattle farming practices in Nebraska. Many farmers are using techniques like rotation grassing, that Chris was telling me about, and conservation tillage to reproduce the impact of their operation on the land and improve the health of their herds. The meat they produce here, buckhouse meat, is 100% grass-fed beef from start to finish. They guarantee that their animals spend their entire lives happily living on open pasture. They are antibiotic feed-free, hormone-free, and never fed any grain. Chris is in his late 20s and 5th generation to this place.
What about your siblings? Are they also here?
They are not. They are elsewhere. My sister is in South Bend, Indiana. My brother lives in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Was it always in the card that you were the one to take over here?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've always really.
What if you decided to be an engineer or a software engineer or computer programmer?
I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I guess we'll never know the answer to that.
Did you
question.
feel the pressure, or is it just something you wanted
I
to
never.
do?
Mom and Dad never really encouraged. Well, they didn't necessarily tell me I needed to come back, or that was kind of something that I wanted to do on my own.
Yeah.
And so there was. Some families do really pressure kids to come back, and that really creates a dislike, and just like forcing anyone to do something.
Exactly.
If they don't want to do it, if they don't have a passion for it,
Exactly.
they will not.
It was absolutely a unique experience to stay at a farm in Nebraska and meeting the family, Mary Lou, John, and their son Chris, a real cowboy. He taught me a lot about cattle farming, which is an important part of the economic and culture of Nebraska.
Well, technically, you're a real cowboy, but I'm kind of disappointed that you're not on horseback.
Well,
You got the hat.
well, I had one caught, but Mom told me you probably couldn't ride. So, yeah, I did actually have one caught earlier today. I was using one earlier today.
Do you also carry a gun? Or?
I can't tell you that. If I told you that, I'd have to kill you. Yeah, I don't carry a handgun, but a lot of times I'll have a rifle in a pickup to shoot a coyote. Or a rabbit or what have you. We also have what are called prairie dogs out here that dig holes in the ground. They look like a squirrel, kind of like a fat squirrel, but they'll dig a hole in the ground and they make areas for cows to break their legs, and they aren't good. They mow the grass off really short, so they're a real pest. And so if you see them, you want to kill them, so you can kill them with a poison. Or they're really fun to shoot, too. So, if you see them, they're also a heck of a lot of fun.
Interesting.
The farm is around 20 minutes north of Gothenburg, Nebraska.
Thanks for the tour. Yeah.
And as the name indicates, there are not only Danish ancestors here. Gothenburg, Nebraska is named after Gothenburg, Sweden, Göteborg, as we call it in Danish, or Göteborg, as they say over there in Sweden, and is noted for its large number of residents with Swedish descent. This Gothenburg was founded in 1882 by Olof Bergström, after coming to America from Sweden in 1881. Bergström worked for a time on the Union Pacific Railroad, then homesteaded in Dawson County near Gothenburg. He eventually became the land agent for Union Pacific. They were able to take some land, the so-called railroad land, and then sell it off to fund the railroad. Bergström also selected the site that was to become Gothenburg and located a farmstead about a mile north. The Union Pacific Railroad laid out the original town of 8 blocks parallel to the railroad tracks. Bergstrom made several return trips to Sweden to bring more Swedish settlers back to Dawson County. It's not a big city. At the 2010 census, there were 3,574 people in 1,494 households, including 974 families in the city. But the next day, I got to see what a vibrant little city it is.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Did I
you.
say that?
What was
halfway right?
Yeah, that's
Jan. I happened to be in.
How do you spell it?
Jan.
Mary Lou invited me to join them at their friend Jan's house on Avenue E, across the street from the Gothenburg Public Library.
Is it short for something?
Janice.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody, right, Mary Lou?
Right.
Best kept
That's
secret.
right, I know.
Anyway, sit here on the curb with, if you can, Mr. Man is.
Here we would have a front row seat in some garden chairs to the annual Gothenburg Harvest Festival
Like
Parade.
coffee? Yes, I'll bring
The
this.
Dane would like coffee. Hello, how are you, Bob?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. This is our guest from Denmark today.
From Denver?
Denmark.
Oh, Denmark.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little further than Denver.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I'm heading to Denver.
Are you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is a whole lot better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you sound like you're from Denmark.
Yeah.
When you said whatever,
Yeah, and we think we might even be related, because
that's what we're thinking.
She used to be a Christian, and so did I. So
We're thinking we're related.
It's a big deal for the community, and maybe even more so for the kids, because everyone in the parade is throwing out handfuls of candy.
And I don't know if this happens in Denmark, but all the kids line the streets with their bags because they throw out lots of candy.
so they're ready.
They're ready for all the candy, yeah. Because, we never get enough candy.
No.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Mary Lou, what is this festival?
this is called the Harvest Festival.
So, and we're front row seats to a parade that's going to happen.
Yes, we are front row seats to a big parade that's going to happen. Of all the locals, and they may or may not have actually made a float. If they haven't made a float, they're just driving a car.
A float?
Yeah, they call it a float. They decorate the back of a truck. You might ride on it. The theme of this parade this year is called the All-American Parade, or All-American City.
Excellent.
Gothenburg just won an award called an All-American City, this community. For some of their achievement.
What does it take to be an all-American city?
They have a number of achievements. They just recently rebuilt the hospital, and they attached a YMCA to it. They have a new school. They have a big effort in a community-run movie theater that's all run by volunteers.
But how big is Gothenburg?
3,500 people.
3,500. Yeah. So not that big.
3,500. No.
The original Gothenburg in Sweden is slightly bigger.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful sunny day in Gothenburg, and then the parade starts.
Here comes the marching band. It's from Gothenburg high schools, and two boys are carrying a sign saying "Marching Swedes," and then a drawing of a Viking.
And what a parade it is. We have fire trucks, marching bands, an open-top Lincoln with the Grand Marshal, a marching band from Gothenburg High School starting with a sign saying "Marching Swedes" and a drawing of a Viking, followed by cheerleaders and even a guy dressed up as a cow. But let's not forget the real stars of the show. The dentists waving a sign saying "Fight tooth decay the American way." I'll say, because they're also throwing out candy. Yeah, you heard me right. These dental heroes are fighting tooth decay the American way, one lollipop at a time.
Hello? Okay, the dentists are throwing candy. Look at that.
And don't worry, they're not just giving out any old candy. They're giving out the good stuff. The kind that will make you want to come back for more fillings.
As the parade goes on, we can see a float from the Gothenburg Methodist Church, complete with red and blue balloons arranged in a star and a giant green T-shirt with a Bible quote. And let's not forget the classic American cars, including a 100-year-old Hudson car. These beauties are a reminder of a simpler time, a time when cars didn't have computers and you had to crank them to start. And who could forget the winner of the National American Miss Beauty pageant, riding a truck and wearing a tiara? She's the belle of the ball, the cream of the crop, you get the idea.
2 years before the railroad went through from east to west, there was an enterprising man that decided he was going to carry the mail from St. Joe, Missouri to California by horse and rider.
Carry what?
The mail. And so the rider would ride one horse 20 miles at top speed to the next a little station where someone would have the next horse ready, and they would trade horses and carry the mail all the way to California. But it only lasted 2 years because the railroad was completed by then. But we have a Pony Express station in the park, 3 blocks up there.
I've heard the term Pony Express before.
That's
I
what
just
it
didn't know
is.
the story behind it.
It's just a small building, log building.
But the railroad, did that end up going close to here?
Yes, it did. And actually, part of the land that we own was railroad land that the government gave the railroad company every other section of land for 20 miles north and south of the railroad line in a checkerboard fashion, and then they sold it off and got money to build the railroad. So our land, some of our land was railroad land.
Then more marching bands, more floats, more candy, a float with a dozen of old veterans and a sign saying, "All American City Heroes," more candy, a truck from the local radio station, KRVN 880 Rural Radio, more tractors, more classic cars. And as the parade passes me, I reflect on the true heroes of the day, the people of Gothenburg, Nebraska. They've come out in full force to celebrate their town and their community. And isn't that what parades are really all about? So here's to you, Gothenburg. Keep on parading, my new Scandinavian American friends. Keep on parading.
The radio vagabond Palle Beau ventured to Nebraska with a curious glow. On a farm he stayed, and Chris the cowboy he met, out to count the cattle, they ventured without fret. He learned about the cows, and their life on the land. Happy cows make better meat, that's what he could understand. And then he heard the story of the ancestor of Mary Lou, who left Denmark for Nebraska, but why, nobody knew. Was she pregnant or just poor, seeking a better life? The mystery remains, lost in time's eternal strife. But Palle Beau listened, and the tale she shared, of how her great-grandmother fared. The adventure went on, to Gothenburg, they flew, to witness a parade, a colourful view. A white open-top Lincoln, the Grand Marshal in tow, with fire trucks and a marching band, the beat, it did flow. A drawing of a Viking, classic cars shining bright, tractors and a dentist, all a child's delight. The cheerleaders and balloons, the church's float, all a part of the show, in this little city, afloat. And so, the radio vagabond, Palle Beau, continues his journey, still with a great flow. To learn and share, with all who will hear, his tales of travel, bringing us all near.
Thanks for having me in your ears. My name is Palle Beau, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.
Oh, yeah, you kids get that little ball. Yeah, you got a football. Way to go, you caught it.
Radio Vagabond.
Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.
Before I leave you, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Mary Lou's friend Jan, who invited us to the parade. As you heard, she was funny and so full of life. But shortly after my visit, her cancer returned in full force, and she passed away within a year. I'm sure you'll be missed by your friends and family, and I'm so glad that I got to meet you. Thank you.